health of our female children. Before I move on, I'll make these disclaimers. There is no financial conflict to declare in this particular presentation. And I have used artificial intelligence for a few specific purposes. I use Napkin for creating some illustrations and ChatGPT for some pictures. The content is not AI generated. So before I move on to the topic, I'll just have one slide focusing on the shift that is happening over last few years in the uh, disease burden, not just in India but globally. The non-communicable diseases are taking over the communicable diseases. The prevalence of communicable diseases in India has gone drastically down over last 5 years. Not just these 5 years, but the data is from 2015 to 20. And at the same time, if we look at the burden of non-communicable diseases like diabetes and hypertension, it is exponentially rising. This particular release, which was in the media, it shows that the prevalence of diabetes or death due to diabetes has increased around six-folds over last 5 years. Now, this is the slide from the ICMR INDIAB study, which was published recently and which looked at the overall burden of metabolic conditions in India. And the numbers are here. So we have around 101 million individuals with diabetes, more than that with prediabetes, hypertension, generalized obesity, abdominal obesity, and dyslipidemia. And we know that all these contribute together for the development of all the chronic micro and macrovascular complications. Now, these are a few slides which are talking about the demographic shift in the prevalence of diabetes. So this was a study I picked up from Canada, which was published in the year 2008 and 9. If you can notice, the peak prevalence of diabetes in this particular study was in the age group of 75 to 79. A few years later, there was another study which was published in 2012 from Swedish registry, and here the peak has shifted leftwards towards around 65 to 67 years. So younger people are developing diabetes now. And then this is the data from ICMR INDIAB study, the Indian data. In this particular study, they found the peak prevalence of diabetes was in the age group of 55 to 64, which is even younger. And then we have the data which is not published yet, which is from Defeat Diabetes campaign, which we did in the whole country through RSSDI. And in this, we found that the peak prevalence of diabetes was between 45 to 49 years. So more and more young individuals are getting diabetes. The age distribution curve of prevalence of diabetes is shifting leftwards. So younger people and more number of young people are getting diabetes. Now, what is the importance of this? Before we move on, this is another study which I looked at from the CDC website. And here they were interestingly looking for the prevalence of type 2 diabetes in young individuals below the age of 20 years. These numbers are also rising steadily. And what they are projecting are the number of individuals with type 2 diabetes below the age of 20 years, projections for next 20, 25 years. And they show that from the mathematical calculations, if the incidence of diabetes remains constant, which means it doesn't increase, then the number of individuals with type 2 diabetes in this age group will increase by 700% by the year 2060, which is a staggering rise of number of people who are young, just below the age of 20 years, and still having type 2 diabetes. And if we somehow try to reduce the incidence of type 2 diabetes, then maybe we can control the numbers a little bit, but still the numbers will keep on rising. Now, this is a famous slide from UKPD's follow-up study. I'm just quoting it as a reference here. And if you see any of the trials in which people are comparing the effect of intensive glycemic control to the standard glycemic control on the complications of diabetes, we usually see a graph like this. Over a period of years, if somebody is treated intensively, the risk of complications goes down significantly. But now, if we just shift the development of diabetes by 5 years, and someone who is developing diabetes at the age of 35 years as opposed to 40 years, again, you will see the same benefits with intensive control. But despite the intensive control, if you look at the prevalence of complications in the individuals who are developing diabetes at a younger age, is equivalent to those who are receiving standard of care, which is non intensive, and developing diabetes at a later stage. So, the point that I'm making from this particular illustration is developing diabetes at a younger age itself adds to a lot of risk of developing complications. There are several studies. I will not go through all the studies. This is a summary of different studies done through today's study group. And here they have looked at the different complications in individuals who develop diabetes at a younger age. And if you see the bar on the right top, it shows that after 9 years of follow-up from the development of diabetes, around 50% individuals already had some or other microvascular disease. And if we follow these individuals for 15 years, around 90% of them would develop some or other form of microvascular disease, which can be nephropathy, retinopathy, or neuropathy. And same is true for the other complications also. This is a START study in which they looked at, again, young individuals below the age of 40 developing diabetes, and they followed them up. And they uh, reported that even if you look at macrovascular complications, they already have the carotid artery abnormalities, intimate media thickness, plaque formation, and all these abnormalities at a very young age if they have developed diabetes, and more so in individuals who are having insulin resistance. This is another study which is looking at the estimated median survival based on the age of development of diabetes. Now, if you look at the graph on the x-axis, age is plotted. So when someone develops diabetes at the age of 80 years, his survival is comparable to someone who is not having diabetes. The red dots are for control subjects who are non-diabetic, and the light blue dots are for individuals who develop diabetes. So someone who develops diabetes at the age of 80, his survival is equivalent to another person who is non-diabetic. But as the development of diabetes happens earlier, at the age of 60, 50, the survival goes down. And individuals who develop diabetes at the age of 30 years, they lose around 8 years of their life. And if they develop diabetes below the age of 20 years, they lose around 12 to 13 years of their life. Their survival goes down. This is a meta-analysis in which they looked at similar studies which are done only in young individuals who develop diabetes at the younger age. And here they looked at the advantage of delaying the development of diabetes by just 1 year. So the meta-analysis concluded that if you can delay the development of diabetes just by 1 year, you can reduce the risk of all-cause mortality by 4%, macrovascular disease by 3%, and microvascular disease by 5%. And if you divide these into different complications, again, you can see that there is 8% reduction in the risk of retinopathy, 6% nephropathy, 5% neuropathy, and even 2% of coronary heart disease just by delaying the development of diabetes by 1 year. The important key take home message from this particular study is that prevention or delaying the development of diabetes is the key to preventing the complications of diabetes. If we don't do this, we are having a huge number of young individuals who are developing diabetes, and they will be developing complications at a younger age and will be having a huge burden on our healthcare system in managing the complications like nephropathy, retinopathy, and cardiovascular disease. And based on this, recently in the Diabetes India conference, under the leadership of Dr. Banshi Sabu, we released Ahmedabad Declaration, which was a paper in which we gave the framework of combating the growing epidemic of young onset diabetes in young Asians. Now, if you look at the causes of this increasing prevalence of diabetes among young individuals, we know that genetic and environmental factors are always there. The obesity is rising, particularly the abdominal obesity and childhood obesity. One factor which is often neglected is the poor perinatal nutrition, and we'll focus on that particular aspect now. This is a study in which they looked at the attributable risk factors for the development of these metabolic complications, and they found that the one that stands out is the obesity. So, higher the body mass index, higher is the risk of getting diabetes and all the other metabolic disorders. But there is a difference. So, it is true for the European population, for the American population, but if we compare them with the Asians, then the Asians develop diabetes at a lower BMI, and that is what is seen from this particular graph. So the red one is for Europeans. They start developing diabetes after the BMI of 22, and it steadily rises as the BMI increases. But if we look at Japanese, Chinese, and Asian Indians, they start developing diabetes at a very low BMI of 18 to 19, which is considered normal as well. Again, we know about this thin fat Indian phenotype. So this was a very old study published by Dr. Yudkin, and here he compared the body fat distribution between Dr. Yudkin and Dr. Yagnik, and here he showed that the Indians, they have a higher body fat percentage at the comparable BMI, and that is not only true for the adults, but even at the stage when the newborn is getting birth. At that time also, he analyzed the newborn children, compared the body fat analysis and some biochemical parameters in the newborn Indians and those with the Europeans, and it was found that the newborn Indians, they have a high resistance at the birth itself, and because of that they develop diabetes at a younger age, which is around 10 years younger compared to the Caucasians, at a lower BMI of around 4 to 6 kg per meter square, lesser than the Western individuals. The mid-arm circumference is less. They have a higher waist hip ratio. They have higher subcutaneous fat. The fat percentage is comparatively higher in individuals who are born in India, and they also have a higher insulin resistance. Now, we may argue that this is our genetic composition, and because of the genes, we are having these all higher risk of diabetes at a younger age, and high body fat percentage, and risk of developing diabetes at a lower BMI. But actually, there are some other factors also. So, this is a global heat map of the birth weight, and this shows that the concentration of the low birth weight individuals is in India. So India is a country where the average birth weight is very low. We are among the countries which are having the lowest birth weight, and despite that low birth weight, we again have a higher prevalence of obesity in the adulthood, and then higher prevalence of diabetes. So Dr. Yagnik has done a lot of study on this over last 30 years. He has spent his life in studying this particular phenomena, and there are several papers by Dr. Yagnik. I will not go through all those, but here, as I said earlier, he compared the newborns who are born in India and those who are white Caucasian newborns, and he has shown that the newborn in India, though they are smaller for their compared to their counterparts, their size is smaller, but their body fat is more. They have less of muscle mass, less of viscera. They have high insulin levels at the birth. They have high leptin levels, and they have low adiponectin levels. What he attributes all this is to the in utero environment. So, according to Dr. Yagnik, and there are several other researchers also who are proponents of this theory, that the maternal health is the most important factor deciding the health of the newborn and his future health. So, maternal nutrition, be it macro or micronutrients, the in utero environment when the baby is in the womb, the conditions like anemia, hypertension, hyperglycemia in pregnancy, all these factors decide how the baby will grow in the adulthood. The adrenal factors like obesity, PCOS, and history of GDM in the female also impact it, and also the premature deliveries or the cesarean sections, which are very common in India because of the short stature. So these are the different factors which are leading to the newborns in India who are having high insulin resistance since birth. And if somehow we can address this, we can probably reduce the prevalence of diabetes and all these metabolic complications in our generation. So this is what the cycle goes through. Because of the poor maternal nutrition, the baby is born with a low birth weight, but baby has got higher body fat. So the Indian newborns, they are uh, having a low body weight, and that is why the parents are concerned, and they are given a high simple carbohydrate in their nutrition. They are overfed, and this nutritional imbalance leads to rapid postnatal growth. So these children who are very lean and thin in the young childhood, by the time they get they develop puberty or they become adolescent, they start putting on weight, and then they get obesity, and particularly central obesity. There are some other environmental factors like the urbanization and changing lifestyle, the high carb diets and the processed food, the sedentary lifestyle that we have, the inadequacy of exercise, and all this is leading to increased prevalence of all the metabolic disorders in our population. So I'm just summarizing what we have discussed earlier. The Indian females, typically they are having thin fat phenotype. They are short stature compared to the Caucasians. They are not nourished well, most of them, majority of them. Many of them develop PCOS and obesity by the time they become adolescent. And when this girl becomes a mother, she usually doesn't go for any preconceptual planning. There is not the concept of the counseling before conception is not there in India. There are usually accidental pregnancies. During the pregnancy, again, the nutrition is not adequate, and many times they are having the associated conditions like hyperglycemia in pregnancy, eclampsia, and anemia, which leads to the poor in utero environment. And because of that, we get the Indian newborns who are usually low birth weight. They are having high body fat, low muscle mass, and high insulin resistance. And these children then develop into childhood. They are exposed to high sugar, overfeeding, and which leads to rapid postnatal growth. And we develop the typical thin Indian thin fat phenotype, in which the individual might not be having very high BMI. Usually, they have a central obesity, high body fat percentage, but they are predisposed to developing diabetes. And the female children again get pregnant, and the cycle is repeated. So this is a cycle which is a vicious cycle, and is probably responsible for the rapid rise of young onset diabetes in our country, and the rising prevalence of metabolic disorders in our population. The key to breaking this is to have a healthy child, female child, go as a healthy mother, have a proper nutrition during her pregnancy, and so that she can give birth to a healthy child. So that is why there is a need that we start focusing on our young female children, young girls from a very young age, probably by involving her parents as well as teachers, start educating the children and their families about the importance of their health, about the importance of preventing the development of obesity, about the importance of achieving the proper target height, and these facts should be included in the school curriculum so that the young females or girls, they are educated about the importance of their health. And we should involve the parents as well as teachers in the discussion during the parent teacher meetings. The health or the growth of the children should be monitored by using growth charts so that we can pick up the girls who are falling short of their height or the girls who are putting on weight, and we can intervene on time so that by the time the girl grows into adolescent and the reproductive age group she reaches, before that she is healthy and ready to conceive. Once the girl becomes of the reproductive age group, then we should focus on the health counseling, and we should create awareness among the general population regarding the importance of preconceptional planning. The complete health checkup should be done before the girl conceives. During the pregnancy, we should also focus on the nutrition and ensure that she gets a balanced diet with a proper amount of micro as well as macronutrients. We should also look for and screen the girls for the development of GDM, which is very prevalent in our country, for the other conditions like anemia, like the hypertension in pregnancy, and we should treat these conditions if they are there. So, if we can start focusing on the girls since a very young age, ensure that they do not develop obesity. If you prevent development of obesity, many times you can prevent the development of PCOS also and GDM also. If we ensure that she achieves the target height, which is a proper height as per her parents' height, then we can probably prevent the need for the cesarean section in these children when they get pregnant. So the key for having a healthy future generation lies in the womb. So we should focus more on the female children and focus on having a proper intrauterine environment for our next generations. This was the quote which was discussed at the beginning of this session. I could hear Dr. Vitul Gupta refer to it, then Anchin also referred to it. I think Irina also said about this. That is a very famous quote. You educate a man and you educate a man. If you educate a woman, you educate a generation. Probably there is a time now to change our focus because most of the girls are getting education now. We should focus on health of a boy. If you focus on the health of a boy, you will probably get a healthy man. But we should ensure that we have a healthy growth for every girl. And if you ensure that, you can probably transform the healthy girl into an entire progeny which is healthy, and probably that is how we can prevent this massive spread of metabolic disorders in our country. Thank you very much for your patient listening.